Today we're going to be talking about Aikiken, and I started a video series on Joe, but it's a little difficult to continue without further explanation of how to use a sword, considering there are many technique overlaps between the two, well, from Ken to Joe especially. First of all, holding the sword. So what you want is the butt of the sword to dig in your palm right here, so that when you wrap your pinky and these two fingers around it, it's centered right into your palm. And then what you do is you count one fist up, and now this is where the right hand goes. Okay? So now that you know how to hold the sword, let me show you a little bit how to swing it. Now don't forget about stance, okay? So, hammi, hammi, hammi. This is the basic stance. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a backwards triangle, and the feet are perpendicular to each other, like this, okay? You can check it by going like this. My weight is basically in the center, slightly forward, and my knee, this knee should be pointed a little bit that way. So a good way to test if you're standing correctly is just to sink down. My body is stabilized, and the sword becomes part of my structure because of this hand, okay? It goes into my body. It's completely a part of my form now. So finally, Suburi number 1. Here we are in Ken Kamai, or the Ken stance. Okay? And just like this, we raise up, slide our front foot back a little bit. Okay? This part behind the back of my thumb is on my forehead, or just hovering above it. And my elbows are wide. And when I cut down, I slide forward and strike outwards, and my elbows come together and my hands squeeze as if wringing out a towel. Shiboru, shiboru. So if you can see, this is where my hands end. Okay? When they're over my head, they're a little bit more like this, like that. Okay? Boom. Like this. Now I'm checking, I'm sunken into my stance, my feet are in the right position, the butt of the sword is right in front of my center, okay, and my right shoulder is forward. In Aikido we always have this kind of angle. I'm trying to give the opponent as little room as possible to hit me, and my hand is up like this, like a sword, okay? It's the same thing here. I'm trying to make myself a very small target, while it's keeping a giant blade between me and whoever I just so happen to be fighting with another sword. Okay, the left side's a little bit more tricky, especially when it comes to keeping the left shoulder forward and creating as a small a target as possible. One way to do that is actually to marry these two hands. They just so happen to fit perfectly together. They just so happen to fit very perfectly together when like this. Okay? This doesn't decrease your power at all. In fact, it makes the blade more active in your hands. When you're coming up, spread the hands like this. Okay. Left on me. Another thing is that as far as what I've been taught, there are two different kinds of swings with a sword. There's one for cutting through, like as if it were a blade, and there's one for cutting into. And that's more of an Aikiken approach, where when doing a technique, we are cutting into the opponent all the way into their center, and thus producing a throw or some kind of other body manipulation that way. So let me demonstrate to you the first one, which is cutting through like a sword. So the sword reaches maximum velocity before my cut ends, which is indicative of cutting through something. Now cutting into something, my maximum velocity is reached at the very end of my strike. Hey! Hey! And when I strike like this, where it's met at the end, my momentum of my ki goes out. It goes out. Versus the first one cutting through, okay? It settles. Cut, and then it settles back into my center. Anyway, you can practice this on a tire. There are instructions on the internet on how to do that, and it's a really invaluable practice. So I know this is a long video, but this really is such an important aspect of all weapons in Aikido, and it's really difficult to continue without really trying to explain this. And I've probably missed a couple points, but hopefully you got a general idea, and the only real way for you to understand it is just to pick up a sword and do it yourself. So hopefully I gave you some good basics, and you can continue your practice.